On the news here on Nile TV International, I'm Nancy Sarah Barakat, and we start off with the news making headlines this hour. Addressing the Africa 2016 Forum, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi says that development is the biggest challenge facing the continent. The head of the African Development Bank says Egypt to receive $1.5 billion loan, and Ethiopia's Prime Minister says that he supports President el-Sisi's call for integration in the continent. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi inaugurated the first Forum for Investment and Trade in Africa, COMESA, which began in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. 1,500 African and international figures are currently participating in the forum, where President el-Sisi delivered the opening speech for Africa 2016. The forum will tackle means of increasing investment in the continent. Here's a closer look.
Egypt is hosting an international forum on the 20th and 21st of February in the Red Sea resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh, which aims to boost private sector involvement and investments in Africa. The first Forum for Investment and Trade in Africa has begun with the participation of more than 1,500 guests, including heads of state and government. Including the participants were the presidents of Sudan, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and the Ethiopian Prime Minister. In his keynote speech before the Africa 2016 Forum, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi stressed that achieving development was the biggest challenge in the continent. El-Sisi called on African leaders to launch development projects and initiatives that would lead to a prosperous future for Africa. The president stressed the importance of increasing investments in the African continent. On the sidelines of the forum, the president will hold a number of intensive bilateral meetings with African leaders as well as heads of state and international organizations. Under the umbrella of the African Union's Commission, the event was organized by the Egyptian Ministers of Investment, Trade and Industry, International Cooperation and Foreign Affairs. In June, Egypt hosted Africa's three major regional economic committees, RECs, during a tripartite summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, where a free trade agreement across all three RECs was launched. The Continental Free Trade Area brings together the 26 African countries that were members of COMESA, EAC and SADC, and also gives Egypt free trade access to 7 new African nations. COMESA was formed in December 1994, replacing a preferential trade area which had existed since 1981. COMESA is one of the pillars of the African Economic Community.
Also addressing the forum was head of the African Development Bank, Okunwumi Adesina, who said that the bank will grant a $1.5 billion loan to Egypt in a bid to boost and back economic development in the country. He noted that Egypt has received the first tranche of the loan, which is estimated at $500 million. The top official also saluted Egyptians who provided money to finance the new Suez Canal project in a period of only 8 days and dug the canal in a year. Following his address, the president of the African Development Bank said that the bank will continue its investments in Africa's promising sectors such as infrastructure, IT and aviation, adding that the bank has invested in a feasibility study to connect Lake Victoria via the River Nile to the Mediterranean. Linda Abdul-Latif, Nile TV's correspondent to Sharm el-Sheikh, conducted the following interview, and here's an excerpt. And for more on the ongoing Africa 2016 forum, we're being joined now over the phone by Dr. Sharif Al-Khuraibi, economic expert. Thank you very much for your time.
Welcome.
You're obviously at the summit, I understand. You're in Sharm el-Sheikh. Please tell us about some of the deals or some of the discussions that have been going on the sidelines.
Okay, about this conference, as you know, Egypt now, I'm talking about Egypt Sisi, is very much interested in its relationship with our brothers and sisters in the Africans, in the African nations. And this one, this conference is another step forward for having more role in promoting all investment opportunities and trade opportunities for all African nations through this international conference.
Right.
Also, we can see that if we compare this conference with the first economic conference in Sharm el-Sheikh last year, and if we look at the level of the attendees from African countries, you can find that this time it is much better than the first one. It means that the confidence in Egypt and its role, which can be played for the favor of all African nations, it is in a very good mood with all of African countries.
I also want to know what areas of cooperation do you think, Dr. Sharif, are going to be established?
Okay, what I'm saying, this conference, and if we look at the speech of President Sisi, which he put the outline or the frame for having a serious movement for integrated relationship between us and all of African nations. And also when he concentrated on the infrastructure required,
right.
And when he mentioned to the role of the youth, it means that we have now a complete strategy. What we need is to make this strategy a policy for all of African nation governments, and also to have a mechanism for they can follow up for having a reality for all of the recommendations, inshallah, which would be issued tomorrow or raised tomorrow.
Okay.
So I think the beginning of the conference is very successful. The presence of the African leaders that we have, if we can see that the President of Nigeria, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the President of Sudan, the President of Gabon, and many other leaders, if they are there in this conference, it means 50% of the population of the African continent is already represented in this conference. And of course, the others, they are represented as well, but maybe in lower level, little bit. So it's very successful, and inshallah, we expect to have a good recommendations, and what we are also waiting from His Excellency President Sisi is to put a mechanism for making follow-up for such important conference, and it can be done every 2 years, something like this, to see what happened from the first round, and okay, we'll continue, inshallah.
Right. I thank you very much, Dr. Sharif Al-Khuraibi, economic expert, for your insights there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's try once again to bring you Linda Abdul-Latif's interview with President of the African Development Bank.
I'm being joined right now by the President of the African Development Bank, Mr. Adeshina. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today, Nile TV International.
Well, thank you. It's a great delight to be here.
Could you please update us first on the main issues that you will be highlighting during the session that you will be participating in?
Well, I gave a keynote address today. First and foremost, let me say I'm delighted that President LCC organized this, Africa 2016 forum, and the fact that he was able to bring so many heads of state here and captains of industry from across Africa. It's great. Now, as I said, Africa today is working, and African economies are very resilient. Africa's GDP is growing today at 4.4%, annually. And don't forget that the rest of the world is growing at 3%. And if you take a look at Europe, 1.7%, United States at 2%, it tells you that Africa, despite all the challenges you see in the global economy, Africa is working. Now, what I said is that it's important for African countries to continue to diversify their economies, to all their regional integration. It's very important. I'm delighted with what's going on with the COMESA, with the SADC and East Africa Community, tripartite free trade area. But we need a bigger market. Africa today is trading only 2%. 12% with itself, and we need to increase that. And so the African Development Bank will continue to invest in things that will foster that. In particular, regional infrastructure, aviation, maritime infrastructure, ICT technology, but also for Egypt. We are investing already in a pre-feasibility study to connect the Lake Victoria via the Nile, but also to the Mediterranean. And that will open up Egypt and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. That's the kind of Africa we want. One big united Africa with a huge market.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
Interview now. Also addressing the forum today was Ethiopian Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn through his weight behind President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's call to achieve integration among African states and to enhance economic and trade links in the continent. He noted that the ongoing Africa 2016 forum will increase the possibility of tapping into investment opportunities in both the public and private sectors within the continent. Desalegn thanked the Egyptian government for hosting such a conference and giving Africa a chance to continue cooperation to boost growth, adding that Cairo has committed itself to Africa's development. The Premier said that the continent has long been considered a dark spot with the biggest share of human suffering. But today, it has become a developed continent with vast business and investment opportunities. He added that the biggest three African blocs, that's SADC, the EAC and the COMESA, have launched a free trade area with the aim of improving infrastructure and encouraging investments. The Ethiopian Prime Minister went on to say that the continent needs clear policies to improve the economic, social and investment environment. He reiterated that Ethiopia also works with the Nile Basin countries to achieve sustainable development and to improve mutual benefit in order that all countries have a fair share of the Nile waters. Rwanda's Minister of Industry and Trade, Francois Kanimba, said that a number of investment opportunities in his country that are African states currently exist and are open to Egyptian investors. And Nile TV's Zinda Abdulatif conducted the following interview.
I'm being joined right now by the Minister of Industry and Trade of Rwanda, His Excellency Francois Kanimba. Your Excellency, thank you so much for being with us today, Nile TV International.
Thank you too.
Let's start off first with the investment opportunities that are available in Rwanda.
Thank you. As you may be aware, Rwanda is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. In last decade, we achieved an average growth rate of around 8% per annum, which is quite very impressive. When you look at what have been the sector which have been driving this growth, mainly services, like financial services, tourism, telecommunications and real estate industry. But also the agriculture sector has been quite very important in terms of driving the whole growth path of the country, and we still have a significant room to increase. Coming back to your question, I think in terms of what should be the key priority for investment in Rwanda, the first one is the energy, because the country is running a huge power deficit, and we are doing whatever possible to attract investors in investment in the agriculture, in the energy sector. The second one is manufacturing. When you look at how the manufacturing sector has been contributing to the global growth and the GDP of the country, it's still very low. And the country is just at the heart of Africa, linking English-speaking bloc and the French-speaking bloc, and Rwanda is a very proactive believer to the regional integration process. We have a huge market potential through different countries surrounding the country. So there is a significant opportunity for big manufacturing companies all over the world to come and establish business in Rwanda and take advantage of this business opportunity. There are also opportunities to continue sustaining growth in key services like financial services, tourism, ICT, as Rwanda, you may be aware, is actually one of the countries really which are driving the growth of information and communication technology on the continent. Rwanda will be shortly hosting and will be the headquarter of Smart Africa, which is a global initiative which actually are working really to bridge the gap between Africa and the world as far as the digital economy is concerned. So these are a few areas where I think Rwanda offer very important opportunities for investors.
Now the Rwandan market is full of Egyptian products. How are Egypt and Rwanda both cooperating together in order to increase the trade and industry cooperation between both countries?
Thank you for this important question. Rwanda actually has been hosting many trade exhibition fairs organized by the Egyptian institutions, and so far from discussion with the exhibitors, the process has been very productive. I've been engaging myself discussion with Egyptian investors who have been coming to Kigali to exhibit their product, to see how we can work together, maybe to encourage them establish manufacturing facility in Rwanda to take advantage of the regional opportunities. This is one of the areas where I think really Egyptian investors should be looking by the time. But also other sectors I've been mentioning, I know Egypt has been investing in a few opportunities like in the real estate and in some of the key infrastructure projects, but so far they participate as implementing investment by the public government, not really as a private investors. So manufacturing is probably a huge potential, and we do expect to continue engaging in such a dialogue for this to happen.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for being with us today Nile TV International.
Thank you.
And thank you, Linda, once again for that interview. And on the sidelines of the forum, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with the President of Equatorial Guinea, Obiang Nguema, during which they discussed bilateral relations. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Ala Yusuf said that the two presidents stressed that both countries enjoy friendly ties. President el-Sisi held the economic policies undertaken by Guinea, noting that Egypt is ready to support the country through programs and activities presented by the Egyptian Agency for Cooperation and Development. For his part, Mr. Obiang hailed official efforts by Egyptian firms working in his country. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi held a meeting with COMESA's Secretary General Sindiso Nguema that was attended by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Investment, International Cooperation, Trade and Industry. Presidential spokesman Ala Yusuf said that el-Sisi held the efforts of the COMESA in increasing cooperation and regional integration in Africa. He reiterated Egypt's support for the activities of the COMESA on both the regional and international levels, as it provides technical support to enhancing inter-trade in the continent. The President thanked the economic bloc for sending observers to monitor the parliamentary elections in Egypt last year. For his part, the economic bloc's chief praised el-Sisi's efforts to back development in Africa and to boost bilateral economic and investment relations among African states. He said that Egypt has become the political and economic capital of Africa as it hosts many important forums. The meeting also focused on cooperation in infrastructure, food security, as well as the establishment of a naval route project between Lake Victoria and the Mediterranean. More local news, and President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi called for introducing new laws and regulations that guarantee a better performance by security forces and bring to justice those who violate the rights of citizens. In a meeting with the Minister of Interior, Magdi Abdel Ghaffar, in Sharm el-Sheikh, el-Sisi reiterated that such laws should be presented to the House of Representatives within 15 days. He added that violations by some security personnel must be confronted according to the law. However, el-Sisi also stressed that such violations were considered individual and irresponsible acts by a limited number of policemen. Regionally, the Arab League's Deputy Secretary General Ahmed Ben Hilli said that Mauritania will be hosting the upcoming Arab League summit after Morocco decided not to. Morocco decided not to host the 2016 Arab League meeting, saying it wanted to avoid giving a false impression of unity in the Arab world. The annual meeting, which would have been the group's 27th, was initially set for March in the Moroccan city of Marrakesh,